Bar Muhammad wale Muhammad salawat. Allahumma. Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. We're going to begin today's program with Quran recitation and poetry by Brother Ayan Zaidi. Bar Muhammad wale Muhammad salawat.
Bar Muhammad wale Muhammad salawat. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والشمس والضحى والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء وما بناها والأرض وما طهاها والنفس وما سواها فأهماها فجرها وتقواها قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها كذبت ثمود بثغواها إذا انبعث أشقاها فقال لهم رسول الله ناقة الله وسقياها فكذبوه فأخروها فدمدم عليهم ربهم بذنبهم فسواها ولا يخاف عقباها صدق الله العلي العظيم. Another loud salawat, please. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. In the desert sands of Karbala, a battle raged so fierce and raw, as Imam Hussein and his followers fought for justice, honor, and more. Among the brave and faithful few was Hazrat Ali Asghar, so new, a 6-month-old baby in his father's arms, a symbol of love, of hope, and charm. The sun beat down on the desert floor as the battle raged on, and Imam Hussein watched with a heavy heart as his companions fell one by one. But he still fought with all his might, for he knew that he was in the right, and he held his son so close and dear as the battle raged without fear. And then a cry went up so loud as an arrow pierced through the crowd, and Hazrat Ali Asghar fell to the ground, his tiny heart no longer bound. Imam Hussein's heart was torn apart as he picked up his son and held him close, as he cried out to the world in pain, as he mourned the loss of his sweetest rose. But though the battle was lost that day, and the sands of Karbala turned red, the memory of Hazrat Ali Asghar will live on forever, never dead. For he was a symbol of love and hope, a reminder of all that's good. And though he left this world so young, his legacy will always be understood. So let us honor his memory and remember his brave and pure heart, and let us strive to be like Hazrat Ali Asghar and never let injustice tear us apart. Salawat.
Jazakallah, Brother Ayan. Please have not loud salawat. Today's program is sponsored by Brother Ali Barodwala and Sister Jennifer Dabhoiwala, Brother Adil Rizvi and Sister Tahrim Rizvian, Dr. Nuzhat and Brother Iqbal Zaidi. And Tabarak is sponsored by Brother Ali Barodwala and Sister Jennifer Dabhoiwala, and Brother Shahid Ali and Sister Fatima Ali, and Dr. Humain Abbas and Sister Sophia. Please have loud Surah Fatiha and 3 times Surah Ikhlas For all their marhumin, those who have no one to recite Surah Fatiha for, and all the marhumin on the names of Fatima Zahra. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Now I'd like to call up Hujjatul Islam, Sheikh Reza Hemyani to please come and deliver a speech. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وبه نستعين إنه خير ناصر ومعين. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، سيما بقية الله في الأراضين وحجته على الخلق أجمعين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلى على محمد وعلى محمد. Before beginning, if I can ask all of the brothers on this side to move over into the center or to the right side so that we can have more space. A little bit more, if you don't mind. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Dear brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is the night before Ashura, the eve of the day of Ashura. In the past 10 nights, we have been talking about Surat Al-Fajr, and we are at this final juncture of the surah. Allah speaks to those believing mu'mineen and mu'minat. He says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. He says, and he speaks, يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة, O you soul at peace, you tranquil soul. Come back to your loving and nurturing Lord. Enter into the company of my true believers and true servants. Enter into my Jannah and my pleasure and all of the blessings that I have promised you. Last night, we talked about this verse of the Quran, this verse right before this final juncture of Surah Al-Fajr, where when human beings enter into the Day of Judgment, they are brought forth. They say, يَقُولُ يَا لَيْتَنِي قَدَّمْتُ لِحَيَاتِي. They say, and we say, oh, would that I would have prepared something for my life. Would that I had prepared something for this day of judgment, my true life, the thing that I have been living for, that I have been looking forward to, whether I knew it or not. Last night I mentioned that the kuffar, the disbelievers, those who sin and go against the commandments of Allah, they are going to feel this regret because they have squandered their potential. They have wasted the time and the blessings that Allah has given them. They have gone against His commandments. And on that day, they're going to realize how much they have squandered. And so they will say, يَقُولُ يَا لَيْتَنِي قَدَّمْتُ لِحَيَاتِي. I am full of regret. Now I see the consequences of my actions. I see that not just in front of my eyes, but I see it and I feel it in the depths of my soul. Allah will drag them into the hellfire. But according to some of our mufassirun, our commentators, they say that, in fact, it's not just the kuffar, the disbelievers, the people who go against the commandments of Allah, those who sin, those who bring about the anger and the wrath of Allah upon themselves. Even the believers will have regret. Even the believers will say on that day, يَقُولُ يَا لَيْتَنِي قَدَّمْتُ لِحَيَاتِي. Because they will realize they thought their potential was to simply do the ibadat that they knew, to do their salat, and, for example, take part in the certain things that they associated with religion. But then they realize on that day that I could have spent my entire life dedicating it to Allah, doing dhikr and remembering Allah. All of the different parts of my life, not just when I come into the masjid, not just the time that I spend in my salat, but every part of my life could have been dedicated to Allah. And so he says, or she says, even the mu'mineen, in other words, will say, I wish that I have fulfilled my potential, strengthened my relationship with Allah. Allah turns to these people, these mu'mineen, these believers who aspired to something greater than this world. And He talks to them. People who have this tranquil soul. Allah, He gives us two different types of people, and He speaks to those who have dedicated themselves. Whether it is fully dedicated, they've reached their potential, or those who at least aspired to it. He speaks to them. Again, as I mentioned last night, one of the beauties of the Quran, the greatest blessing that Allah gives to His believers on the Day of Judgment is that He speaks to them. He welcomes them Himself. Salamun qawlan min Rabbir Rahim. Allah, He says Himself, welcome. I give you my greetings and my peace. Don't worry anymore. In this verse of the Quran, in Surah Al-Fajr, Allah as well speaks to those believers. He says, He does not say that I will tell them, or for example, the angels will tell them, come into the blessings of Allah, enter into heaven. Allah Himself speaks. He says, Ya ayyatuha an-nafsul mutma'inna. O you soul at peace, you tranquil soul. Irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiya. Come into and come back to your Lord. Not just any Lord. Rabb is a person who nurtures you, who cultivates you, who picks you up when you are down, who feeds you, who gives you water, and who cultivates your soul. That is a Rabb. Irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiya. Don't just enter into my company, but enter into my company in a way that you are satisfied and you are satisfied with. In other words, your relationship with Allah is strong. You love Allah and you are content with Allah, and Allah in turn is content with you. فَادْخُلِي فِي عِبَادِي. And enter into the company of my true servants, those who worshipped me and served me. وَادْخُلِي جَنَّتِي. Enter into my pleasure and my blessings. The full manifestation of Allah's contentment with us. As I mentioned, these verses of the Quran, they speak to that nafs al-mutma'inna. We have to think about, what does it mean for us? What is it that takes us to that state? An-nafs al-mutma'inna. That thing that will allow us to reach that state is our relationship with Allah. Strengthening those bonds. Again, strengthening those bonds, we take lesson from Rasulullah himself. We say that our relationship with Allah, we understand what it means to have a relationship of love and of contentment with Allah through Rasulullah. And so Allah speaks to His Prophet. He says, He commands His Prophet. He tells him, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. The Day of Judgment, when these mu'mineen come into the presence of Allah, what do they regret? They regret not having reached the ultimate potential that a human being could possibly reach. Allah explains for us what that ultimate potential is in these verses of Surah Al-An'am. Allah speaks to His Prophet. He says, say to the people, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي. Think about our religion. What does our religion teach us? It teaches us salat. Worship and orient yourself 5 times a day towards Allah, towards the Kaaba. I'm sorry, can you all see me properly, or should I move this a little bit over? Okay, thank you. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And I will also take this opportunity to ask the brothers to maybe move to this side so we can have space for others to as well sit when they come in. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allah says to His Prophet, say, Ya Rasulullah, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي. My prayers, my canonical prayers, وَنُسُكِي, and my worship, وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي, and my life and my death, لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ, is all for Allah. We want to think about our state on the Day of Judgment, how we cannot feel the utmost regret on the Day of Judgment, how we can maybe even reduce that regret on the Day of Judgment. We take lessons from this ayah. My salat is dedicated to Allah, and my worship is dedicated to Allah. My life and my death is dedicated to Allah. My life and my death. In other words, sometimes we think that our religion is purely when we come into the masjid. I'm doing something religious, I'm a religious person because I pray a lot. I come to the masjid a lot. I interact with my community members a lot. And that is the extent of my religion. I am labeled a religious person. I go to Hajj. I fast during the month of Ramadan. I have limited, in other words, my religion to a few minutes in the day. For those who are very religious, maybe it is half an hour throughout the day I spend praying to Allah. Or particular months during the year. Month of Ramadan comes, I fast the entire month, inshallah, Allah gives me the opportunity. And then the month of Ramadan goes, I fill up my bank of religiousness, and then I go home and I continue my life. I take the break for a month, and then I continue the rest of my life. Maybe if Allah gives me the opportunity to go to Hajj, then I increase my religion, and then when I come back, I get on with the rest of my life. The rest of my life. But Rasulullah, he is told that if you want to think about how to dedicate yourself to Allah, don't just compartmentalize. Don't say this is where my religion starts and where it stops. This is where I live my life, and this is where I live my religion. Rasulullah is told, your prayer is a part of your religion. Your worship is a part of your religion, but as well, your life and your death. How do I lead my life? Do I think about the values of my religion? In other words, do I think about my relationship with Allah when I am at work? Think about not just getting worship in, setting the time aside to do my prayer, but I think about my relationship with Allah. What is it that is going to increase and strengthen that relationship? The thing that increases and strengthens that relationship is me acquiring all that which gives and brings the pleasure of Allah in my life. And so that is expansive. That is all-encompassing. What is it that Allah loves me to do? When I'm at work, Allah loves for me to be a person of integrity, a person of honor. So I can't cut those corners. I can't not give it my all. When I'm at school, Allah wants me to be a person of integrity and of honor. That's what He loves. That's what will bring those blessings into my life. When I'm in my other relationships, I think of those relationships in terms of my relationship with Allah. And so I try to strengthen those bonds as well, because it's ultimately connected to Allah. My relationship with everything else is defined in terms of my relationship with Allah. Don't think about, in other words, sins and blessings as things you can calculate. Because if you think of it in that terms, then not only have you degraded this ultimate relationship that you have with Allah, but you've also sold yourself short. I can be a person who is loved by Allah and who loves the very source of my existence and the existence of the entire world. That is my ultimate aspiration in life. For myself to love Allah and for Allah to in turn love me back. What is it that requires? That means that I see my relationship with my parents, my brothers and sisters, my community in terms of that love of Allah, that relationship with Allah. Nothing is separate from that relationship. When you love someone, for those who have children, they might have experienced this. When my child gives me something, it might be the ugliest drawing in the world. It might be the worst sculpture, clay sculpture that I have ever seen. but because this is my child that is giving it to me, my young daughter, my 5-year-old daughter, who has put in the time and the effort to give me this drawing. I love that drawing. I put it up on my wall because of my relationship with my daughter. My mother, she calls me and she asks about me. She spends the time in her day to interact with me. I appreciate that because it is my mother, even if it's just a few minutes out of my day. So when I think about it in that term, in those terms, everything else in my life, because it is an imprint of Allah and I love Allah, therefore this thing that I have been given, this time that I have been given on this earth, these blessings are also imprints of Allah. They're reflections of Allah. The more I love and the more He loves me, the more it changes the way I see the world. This community that we are a part of, this should be as well in terms of my relationship with God. قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ وَبِذَلِكَ أُمِرْتُ وَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. There is no partner unto Allah. There's no one that I can replace Allah with. And it is that which I have been commanded to. Allah says to the Prophet, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, Rasulullah says to the Prophet, say, my life, my death, my salat, my worship, that is all for Allah. There is no partner unto Allah. All of this is what I have been commanded to. That is my religion in full. وَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. And I am the first Muslim. He tells the Prophet to say this. What's interesting in this verse is that our Mufassirun tell us other people were named Muslim. They were named people who submitted and devoted themselves to God. Nabi Ibrahim was called a Muslim. Nabi Nuh in the Quran is called a Muslim. And Nabi Ibrahim, he asks Allah to make my entire generation, the people who come after me from my line, all of my inheritors, make them as well Muslimin. Ummatun muslimatun lak. Make them all dedicated to you. But in this verse of the Quran, Allah says to the Prophet, say, wa ana awwalul muslimin. In other words, I am the first Muslim, in meaning that I am the Muslim the likes of which no one has ever reached. Rasulullah, dedicated himself to Allah in a way that no one else can reach his dedication. He's unparalleled, unique in the creation of Allah. We as mu'mineen, believers in the religion of Rasulullah, we try our hardest. In other words, we dedicate ourselves as much as we can. But ultimately, we realize that we're going to fall short. We know that at one point I'm going to, for example, care more about building a great house for myself as opposed to spending some of that money, not living, na'udhu billah, in a small house, living in a medium-sized house and giving the rest of it to my community. I could live in $1 million house. The finances and economics in different parts of the country are different. Let's just say a $2 million house. I could live in a $2 million house and give $100 to my community, or I can live in a smaller house and give the rest to my community. I choose the one that benefits me more. I choose to dedicate my time more to the things that I want instead of those things that bring me closer to God. I sometimes am a person who falls short. I might say something to my brother in my community, and later on I will regret it. Ultimately, we fall short, and we are deficient human beings. But we as mu'mineen, we as followers of the school of the Ahlul Bayt, we know where to get our aspirations from. We know who to look to when we want to see the complete Muslim, person who has dedicated themselves to Allah. Wa ana awwalul muslimin means, in other words, that we look to Rasulullah to see what it means for a person to dedicate his salat, his worship, his mahyai wa mamat, his life and his death, to the path of Allah. And if I ever fall short, then because I know Allah loves His Prophet, I as well love that Prophet. And I go and I ask for the Prophet to ask forgiveness on my behalf with Allah. And I love Rasulullah. And I love the Ahlul Bayt. And so it is said, according to some tafasir, according to one hadith of our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, where in the tafsir of these verses of Surah Al-Fajr, verse number 27, 28, and 29, until the end of the surah, the Imam is asked, when it comes to this surah, it is said, the Imam is asked by one of his companions, Ya Imam, when a believer passes away, is the angel of death going to have to force this believer to die against his will? Is he going to want to stay in this world? Or is he going to be led into the hereafter in a very kind and gentle and merciful way? Is he going to be frightened and scared? Is going to be forced to leave this world? Ja'far as-Sadiq says, no. This believer, this nafs al-mutma'inna, this believer with a soul at peace and tranquility, is a person who is going to leave this world with that peace and with that tranquility. It is said, according to this hadith, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, he says, he describes it for us. He gives us this image. The angel of death is going to come to this believer. And he is going to say to him, don't be afraid. This believer is going to be frightened. And he is going to close his eyes. He says, don't be afraid. Because you are a believer in Allah, because you are mu'min, or you're mu'mina, I am going to come to you like a loving father towards his child. I'm going to be very kind and compassionate to you. Open your eyes. And it is said, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, he describes, he says, open your eyes and see that Rasulullah, Imam Ali, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein are coming to welcome you back to Allah. The believer is going to think about his relationship with the people who are the most beloved to Allah. And Allah is going to welcome him into the hereafter with those people who are most beloved to him. So when we think about our relationship with Allah, we think about our relationship with Rasulullah as well. In those most frightful of moments, most terrifying of moments, you want to see people, in other words, who you love and who are kind to you. And so Allah gives them that blessing. He allows them to see people who He knows are going to welcome him. So Allah gives them that opportunity. He welcomes them with the Ahlul Bayt, in the company of the Ahlul Bayt. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. This is the potential that we can reach. As I mentioned last night, the prophets that Allah had sent to humankind, they were faced with a people, all of the people that the prophet sent. This is described for us in Surah Yasin. The people that Allah sends to humankind, they reject the prophets not simply because they are going against their own religion, but they say to these prophets, in Surah Yasin, Allah explains this. He says that these people will reject the words of the prophets by telling them, it is not possible for Allah Ar-Rahman, the Lord of the worlds, to come and speak to a human being like you and like me. In other words, they think about themselves as simply a human being who makes mistakes and has no connection with God. They limit, in other words, themselves, and they sell themselves short. The prophets are trying to teach them, your limit in life is for you to have a relationship with Allah. It's not just the people that the prophets go to and speak to, and they reject them. Even the angels of God. The angels, in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah says to them that I am going to create on this earth a creature who is going to be my Khalifa. What do the angels respond? They say this creature is going to cause corruption in the land. يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاء. It's going to be a creature who's going to just spill blood and who's going to increase corruption in the land. What does Allah say? He says, I know the potential of this human being. إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. I know what this human being can bring. I know the amount of good and the lights that he can cast in the land. And so despite, in other words, I will end with these words and then we'll turn towards Imam Hussein. Despite all of the evil human beings create in the world, Allah is saying their good outweighs that evil. Their good outweighs their evil. In our calculation, as limited human beings, we might say that we are destroying the world. We might say that the people of Sham and of Kufa are killing the grandson of Rasulullah. How can Allah allow this evil to occur? Allah says, the beauty and the light of Imam Hussein outshines the evil and the darkness of Yazid and his army. And it is worth it to me, angels and people. It is worth it to me for the light of Imam Hussein to shine, despite all of the evil that human beings can bring. So we can, in other words, Allah is saying, don't ever lose hope. I might lose hope in myself, but I shouldn't lose hope in Imam Hussein. I shouldn't lose hope in the person who shines his light throughout all of creation. And that is what I look forward to. When Imam Ali alayhi salam, and just a few days ago, I mentioned this hadith of Amirul Mu'mineen, sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The people during the time, the Khilafat of Amirul Mu'mineen, they had blinded themselves to the Quran. The Quran says, care about the orphans, care about those who are oppressed and who are innocent in your society. And the Muslims were all concerned about accumulating wealth for themselves. Correct? They would read the verses of the Quran and then they would debate with themselves. Imam Ali says, he says to Ibn Abbas, his cousin, he says, go and debate with these people, not through the Quran, because their eyes are blinded to the Quran. He says, go and debate with them with a person who lives the Quran. Hajjihim bil sunnah, bi sunnati Rasulullah. We don't want to just read the Quran, we want to live the Quran. And our measure for what it means to live the Quran is the sunnah of Rasulullah. And so when Rasulullah tells us, the Prophet himself, he tells us that Husaynu minni wa ana min Husayn. Hussein is from me and I am from Hussein. Hussein, Safinatun Naja wa Misbahul Huda. Hussein is that ship of guidance. And he is that light of guidance. He is that ship that you can hold on to when you are drowning in this world. It is Imam Hussein that we look to think about what it means for a human being to reach their ultimate potential. Husaynun minni wa ana min Husayn. Ahabba Allah man ahabba Husayna. Whoever wants to strengthen their relationship with Allah, Allah loves the person who loves Hussein. So yes, we try to dedicate our lives to Allah. We turn our direction in our salat, in our worship to Allah. We try to fulfill all of our responsibilities that we have towards Allah in our life and in our death. But our ultimate responsibility is to think about and to aspire to become like the companions of Imam Hussein, people who dedicated themselves to the path of Imam Hussein, because the path of Imam Hussein is the path of Rasulullah. Rasulullah does not say that there is the path of Hussein and there is my path. He says, Husaynun minni wa ana min Hussein. And so that is why we have other ahadith, we have these ziyarat. One of the ways that we can connect ourselves to Imam Hussein, we can remember the sacrifice of Imam Hussein, is by thinking about and by calling to and by doing ziyarat of Imam Hussein. Last night, I presented us with this question. What does it mean when Imam Hussein goes and calls out to the Kufans? He says, you called me to yourselves. The Kufans send these letters to Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein knows that the people of Kufa are going to, many of them, are not sincere in their call, in their invitation of him. And so he has a very famous and beautiful hadith. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Imam Hussein has a beautiful hadith. He says that I know that religion has simply become something that people talk about. But when times get tough, when they are asked to do something for their religion, when a calamity befalls them, when some sort of difficulty befalls them, قَلَّ الدَّيَّانُونَ. The people of religion become few. And so Imam Hussein, he knew that those Kufans who were calling them, many of them were not sincere. Many of them simply wanted the benefits of, maybe for example, the Khilafat coming back to the city of Iraq. Many of them thought that maybe if Imam Hussein can prevail, then I can get more money or I can get some sort of status. Many of them were opportunists. They wanted some benefit for themselves or for their own family. But when we say we are Shia, we are followers of the school of the Ahlul Bayt, we don't associate ourselves with the people of a particular city. And so when people come and claim that the Shia of Imam Hussein were the ones who led Imam Hussein, na'udhu billah, to his death, we say that we as Shia, we identify ourselves not with the people of a particular city or the people of a particular tribe. We identify ourselves with a certain morality and a certain belief. We identify ourselves with Imam Hussein and with his call. That is what it means to be a member of this school. And so no one can say that, na'udhu billah, the Shia are responsible for the death of Imam Hussein, because the true Shia are the ones who went and connected themselves to Imam Hussein. They gave their life in the plains of Karbala. Those are the people that we aspire to. We aspire to be like those who sacrificed themselves for the Imam, whether it was in the day of Karbala or it was after. There is a very famous saying of one of the companions of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq and Imam Muhammad al-Baqir. Sallu ala Muhammad wa. If we can send another second louder salawat. It is said, this person by the name of Asbagh ibn Nubata, it's a person who was commended and was praised by the Imam himself. The Imam told him that I want for other people to identify my Shia with you. Go and sit in the masjid, give the fatwa to people, answer people's questions, because I want the Shia to be identified with a person like you. This person is asked, what does it mean to be a Shia? He says, a Shia is a person who, when the companions of Rasulullah, they disagree about what the legacy of Rasulullah is, they look to the teachings of Amirul Mu'mineen, of Imam Ali. And when the family of Amirul Mu'mineen, when the different parts of the members of the Ahlul Bayt, they disagree, then they look to one after another, the Imams after Amirul Mu'mineen, until it gets to Imam Muhammad al-Baqir and Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. That is the definition of a Shia. If you cut out all of the extra stuff that we have in our cultures, in our daily practice, in our yearly practice, what it means to be a member of this school is a person who, when they have some sort of disagreement, they look to the teachings of Amirul Mu'mineen. And when there's disagreement among the different schools of the Shia, they look to the teachings of Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, Imam Zainul Abidin, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, until Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. That is why our school is defined by Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. And so we might have different cultures, might have different ways of expressing our devotion to Amirul Mu'mineen and to Imam Hussein, but ultimately it comes back to this thing, that our lessons and our teachings come from the Imams themselves. And the Imams tell us that we have to remember Imam Hussein throughout the year. One of the beautiful verses and phrases in our ziyarat is this: وَأَشْهَدُ أَنَّكَ, speaking to the Imam, وَأَشْهَدُ أَنَّكَ نُورُ اللَّهِ الَّذِي لَمْ يُطْفَأْ وَلَا يُطْفَأُ أَبَدًا. I swear and I bear witness that you are that light of Allah that never can be extinguished, neither in the past nor in the future. We take solace and we take lessons from Imam Hussein, a man who sacrificed himself. It is said that in those final moments in the day of Karbala, in the day of Ashura, when all of his companions and all of the Banu Hashim had been killed, All of the men of the Banu Hashim had been killed. We want to think about what does it mean for a person to have a relationship with Allah. It is said that Imam Hussein, when he has been injured and his body is filled with arrows and his blood is pouring from his body, it is said in those final moments, one of the enemy soldiers, he sees Imam Hussein on the ground. Sometimes we might think that Imam Hussein in those final moments, maybe he was, na'udhu billah, upset. Maybe he condemned the people of Kufa. And yes, they were worthy of his condemnation. But it is said that in those final moments, Imam Hussein says, Allahumma inni ashku ilayka ma yuf'alu bi. Oh Allah, I complain to no one else but to you for what has happened to me. Because I know you are looking upon me. I know you are my only refuge and you are my only source of hope. So Imam Hussein, he looks to the sky and he asks to Allah, oh Allah, give me patience in the face of this trial. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya ibn Rasulillah. Sallallahu alayka ya ibn Amir al-Mu'mineen wa ibn Fatimah al-Zahra Sayyidat Nisa'i al-Alameen. Ya laytana kunna ma'akum fanafuza ma'akum fawzan 'azima. One of the ways that Allah has given to human beings to allow them to connect themselves to Him, to soften their hearts, is by crying, by shedding tears, by giving them trials and difficulties so that their hearts open up and their hearts can be opened up through the tears that we shed. Let us dedicate these moments on the eve of Ashura towards Imam Hussein. It is said, we have various ahadith, that if a person were to cry, or were to make someone else cry, or were even to force himself to cry for Imam Hussein, then Allah will shower him with His own blessings. Tonight is the eve of the day of Ashura. Tomorrow, the companions of Imam Hussein are going to sacrifice themselves for him, and Imam Hussein is going to be left all alone in the plains of Karbala. Imam Hussein is going to call out to all of humanity, will you not come and defend the haram of Rasulullah? Will you not come and protect me and defend me? So one way that we can show Imam Hussein how much we care about him and how much we would sacrifice ourselves for him is by shedding these tears. Let us connect ourselves to Imam Hussein whether we feel it or not. Let us shed some tears for Imam Hussein. It is said that in the night before the day of Ashura, it was actually on the 9th day of Muharram that the battle of Ashura was supposed to take place. So all of the death and all of the martyrdom was supposed to have already taken place. But it is said that Imam Hussein, he asks Abbas, Abul Fadl, to go and ask these people, this army of Umar ibn Sa'd, to give us one more night, because we want to spend this night devoted to Allah in prayer and worship of Allah. We want to recite the Quran. We want to bow our heads down to Allah Himself. And so it is said that the camp and the tent of Imam Hussein spent the entire night in worship of Allah. It is said that the camp of Imam Hussein was buzzing like a beehive, with one person standing up in prayer, another reciting the Quran, and maybe others, they were talking amongst themselves and they were speaking to each other and they were giving themselves glad tidings for what is going to befall them on the next day. It is said that according to the hadith of our fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin, I once heard, according to the Imam, he says that I hear my father. He says, I hear my father, he is preparing himself for the next day. He says the Imam has separated himself and he is preparing himself and he is readying his sword for what is to come. The Imam Zainul Abidin, he recounts this himself. He says that I now hear my father. He recites these words of poetry. Ya dahru uffin laka min khalil kam laka bil ishfaq wal asil. These are the words of Imam Hussein according to the report of Imam Zainul Abidin. He is saying, oh time, how you bring destruction for the people that you love, the people that you befriend. When the nights become days and the days become nights. من صاحب أو طالب قتيل والدهر لا يقنع بالبديل. Regardless of whether you are friend or whether you are foe, time will not be satisfied with anyone except for bringing you down. وإن الأمر إلى الجليل وكل حي سالك سبيل. Everyone will meet their death. It is said that when Imam Zainul Abidin, he heard these words, he knew what was going to come. Imam Hussein, in other words, was telling himself and preparing himself for his own death and for the death of his companions. And it is said that Imam Zainul Abidin, on the night before the day of Ashura, he says himself that my throat became constricted and tears began to fall from my eyes. But I tried to calm myself. I tried to contain myself on that night so others around me would not understand what the Imam was prophesying on the next day. But it is said that Imam Zainul Abidin, he hears his aunt, Lady Zainab, as well. She wails and she cries, oh my brother Aba Abdullah, what are these words that I hear you reciting? It is said that Lady Zainab as well heard those lines of poetry. She hears as well that Imam Hussein is preparing himself for death. This is a night that Lady Zainab tries to spend, getting those final moments that she has with her brother. What must be going through the heart of Lady Zainab? It is said that when Lady Zainab hears these words of Imam Hussein, she cries out and she wails, oh my brother, what are these words that I hear you recounting? And Imam Hussein says, oh my Zainab, it is okay, be calm and be tranquil. Be at peace because you will need your energy for what is to come on the next day. Oh Zainab, I am going to leave your side. There is not going to be Abbas to protect you, or Ali al-Akbar, or Qasim, or even your own, or Muhammad. You are going to have to collect and defend the children. You are going to have to put out the fire of the tents. You are going to have to protect Ali Zainul Abidin yourself single-handedly. So, oh Zainab, collect your energy. Don't let these enemy soldiers hear your cries. It is said that Imam Hussein, on the next day, he sends out his companions one after another. And he sees them dying in front of his own eyes. And Lady Zainab as well sees one after another these companions falling to the ground. At least though she has Abbas. But ultimately as well, Ali al-Akbar, he falls to the ground. Qasim falls to the ground and his body is brought back to the tent. It is said that Abbas as well, he falls to the ground, but Lady Zainab, she at least has solace that her brother is still alive. But it is at one moment that Imam Hussein says, "Oh my sister, ya ukhta nawalini waladi as-saghir." What must be going through the heart of Imam Hussein? How can Lady Zainab? It is said that Imam Hussein, when he calls for his own son, that final sacrifice that he gives on the day of Ashura, it is said that Imam Hussein calls for his infant son, Abdullah as-Saghir, Abdullah al-Radi'. It is said that he does not ask for Abdullah from his mother Rabab. It is said that he asks from his sister Zainab, "Bring me my young child. I want to go and show these people of Umar ibn Sa'd how far they have fallen, that they are not going to even have mercy on an infant." And so it is said that Imam Hussein asks his sister Zainab, "Nawalini waladi as-saghir," so that I can get at least a drop of water for my infant. It is said that Abdullah Ali al-Asghar had become so weak. He had become so thirsty. Imagine an infant child of only a few months old. How much thirst can a young child, young infant bear? It is said that Ali al-Asghar had become so thirsty that he would cry no more. It was so thirsty that the color of his face had changed. He wouldn't even cry anymore. He would simply open his lips and he would close his lips. And Imam Hussein, he takes Ali into his arms. And he covers the face of Ali. He covers the body of Ali with his own cloak. It is said that the enemy soldiers, they see Hussein coming. They say maybe Hussein is coming with the Quran to promise us and to swear us by the Quran. It is said that Imam Hussein, he comes toward the army of Umar ibn Sa'd. They call out, "Oh Hussein, even if you bring the Quran of Allah, we are not going to give you any refuge. We're not going to spare you, O Hussein." And so when Imam Hussein pulls back his cloak, it is said that when Imam Hussein reveals Ali al-Asghar, when he reveals Abdullah, he says, "If you will not spare me, then at least spare this infant son of mine. If you will not have any mercy on me, if you think that I am your enemy, what has this infant done to you?" And so it is said that the army of Yazid, they are debating amongst themselves, what has this young child done to us? And imagine Lady Zainab is looking at the scene. And it is said, when Shimr hears his own army debating amongst themselves, it is said that Shimr, he calls to Harmala, "Will you not give Hussein his response? Some people are debating in my own army. I will not have this. Will you not respond to Hussein's call?" And it is said that Harmala responds. You can imagine the neck of a young child. If even the smallest injury hits it, it will bruise. It will, its color will change. And so, how can, how can the neck of a 6-month-old child bear an arrow piercing through it? It is said that when Harmala casts his arrow, the arrow hits the neck of Ali. But it does not just hit the neck of Ali, it is said that the arrow pierces through and it cuts off the head of Ali. And the arrow hits into the body of Imam Hussein. It is said that Imam Hussein collects the body, the blood of Ali, and he casts it towards the heavens. Imam Hussein doesn't know which way to turn. He has the body of his infant son in his arms. How can I bring this body back to Rabab? How can I give this body back to his mother? How can I bring this body back to Zainab? Maybe she is looking from the tent. Hussein, it is said that at this moment, not only the heavens, but Allah Himself gives His lamentation for Hussein. There was not a moment on the day of Ashura that the heavens themselves call out. But it is at this moment that the heavens call out. Allah Himself is giving His azah to Imam Hussein. It is saying that, Ya Hussein, leave Ali al-Asghar where you are. Leave Ali al-Asghar where you are. For we will give him milk to drink. We will quench his thirst in the heavens. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. I will end with these short lines of poetry. بخواب ای کودک خاموش من، بخواب ای کودک خاموش من، قتلگاهت می شود آغوش من، مخفی از چشم زنان ای دلبرم، مخفی از چشم زنان ای دلبرم، می کنم قبر تو را با دست خویش. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. ماتم حسين.
Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. When Fatima came to Karbala, Zainab said, "Do not look, Ya Zahra. Go back, O mother. They've killed my brother." Zainab said, "Do not look, Ya Zahra. When Fatima came to Karbala, Zainab said, "Do not look, Ya Zahra. Go back, O mother. They've killed my brother." Zainab said, "Do not look, Ya Zahra." When the night fell on that desert campaign, a lonely voice was heard in mourning. Then she looked and saw someone approaching, one who would join her in her grieving. She had come to see her progeny and what had become of their destiny. But she could not let her to go closer. She did not want her to really see. "I do not want you to go further. You will only see pain and horror. Body with no head, 72 dead." Zainab said, "Do not look, Ya Zahra." When Fatima came to Karbala, Zainab said, "Do not look, Ya Zahra. Go back, O mother. They've killed my brother." Zainab said, "Do not look, Ya Zahra. Before you were born, my loving daughter, I was shown this by your grandfather. He told me what was to be for my son and how it would be a tragedy. My brother told me of this day as well. I knew what was to become of me. But even then I could not stand witness when I saw Shimmer walking to him. My mother, you cannot bear to see what they did to his broken body. Arrow in his heart, liver ripped apart. Zainab said, "Do not look, Ya Zahra." When Fatima came to Karbala, Zainab said, "Do not look, Ya Zahra. Go back, O mother. They've killed my brother." Zainab said, "Do not look, Ya Zahra." "O mother," when he stood and addressed the people who had now turned on him, he cried and shed the bitterest of tears. I never saw such a thing from him. "My brother, you who define what is brave, how can I stand to see you crying? I cry not for what shall happen to us, but that the cause of their doom is near." Even in this final moment, he could only think of their torment. How could they kill him? He came to help them. Zainab said, "Do not look, Ya Zahra." When Fatima came to Karbala, Zainab said, "Do not look, Ya Zahra. Go back, O mother. They've killed my brother." Zainab said, "Do not look, Ya Zahra." Then her mother's eyes began to wander. Another body she had to see. A new grave had been dug in the morning. A young infant in there was buried. There lay the young Qasim, son of Hassan, and next to him the older Ali. But it was Ali Asghar she came to, the one they killed in his father's arm. What was the sin of this poor child? When the arrow hit He had wailed, he cried, I'm thirsty. Had they no mercy? Zainab said, do not look, Ya Zahra. When Fatima came to Karbala, Zainab said, do not look, Ya Zahra. Go back, O mother, they've killed my brother. Zainab said, do not look, Ya Zahra. Another had now joined them in their pain. She had also lost her only sons. Fatima held her hand and led the way to the river she wanted to go. Zainab knew what for they had gone searching. Her noble brother they could not see. His arms would show them and lead them to him, where there lay the rest of his body. He went to bring back for us water. Then we heard a shout, oh my brother. We saw the flag fell, that was the farewell. Zainab said, do not look, Ya Zahra. When Fatima came to Karbala, Zainab said, do not look, Ya Zahra. Go back, O mother, they've killed my brother. Zainab said, do not look, Ya Zahra. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. محمد وآل محمد صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. If I can please ask the brothers to proceed to the Urdu hall, the sisters will start coming in.